Hi, I am your friend Avinash, and today's video topic is data binding. The very first question is, what is data binding? Data binding allows us, an internet user, to manipulate web page elements using a web browser. It employs uh, it employs dynamic HTML and and does not require complex scripting or programming. Usually in web pages that contain interactive components such as forms, calculator, tutorials, and games. Incremental display of web page makes data binding convenient. In short, data binding ensures any change made in the UI of the application is also reflected in the component and vice versa. By doing so, data binding ensures consistency throughout the application. Types of data binding: one-way data binding, and two-way data binding. One-way data binding consists string interpolation, property binding, and event binding. String interpolation. Uh, String interpolation is a technique that allows the user to bind a value to a UI element. Interpolation binds the data one way, that is from TypeScript file to HTML file. Next one is property binding. Property binding is one way mechanism that lets you set the property of a view element. Property binding uses square bracket syntax for data binding. It involves updating the value of the property in the component and binding it to an element in the view template. Drawback of uh, drawback of binding is interpolation binding can only be used for string values. When you want to bind boolean values, property binding is a better option. Third one is event binding. This data binding type is used when information flows from the view to the component when an event is triggered. The view sends the data from an event, like a click of button, to be used to update the component. It is exactly opposite to property binding, where the data goes from component to view. The event could be a mouse click or a key press. The event is generally occur due to user interaction. Two-way data binding. Data flows from component to the view and back. The component and view are always in sync and consistency is maintained. That is, changes made on either end will immediately update both ways. This is typically used in forms where any changes need to be reflected in both the component and the view. Thank you. That's all about data binding.